الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah, we'll talk briefly today about the level of al-ihsan as mentioned in the Quran. Since the focus on the ayat of the Quran that talks about a specific subject, and yesterday we talked briefly about the Prophet ﷺ. Before that, it was the talk about the tawheed of Allah, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the level of al-ihsan, which is the highest level of the deen, and how it's mentioned in the Quran, and what are the different subjects in the Quran that al-ihsan is mentioned in it. We won't cover all of this today. Just a reminder that this highest level of a deen is al-ihsan, and this is as defined by the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith of Jibreel ﷺ, when he was asked about al-iman, al-islam, al-ihsan, or al-islam, al-iman, al-ihsan. So when the Prophet ﷺ was asked about al-ihsan, he defined it: أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. That you worship Allah as if you see Allah, and if you don't see Allah, then you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seeing you. And this is the highest level of the deen, that the goal of the Muslim is to reach this level, and not just to reach it once in a while. It's not a feeling that a person gets when he is making the acts of ibadah. It's a level of the deen. A person, when you become in a level, is different than you do an action. So if you do an action of ihsan, that's one thing. But when you are in the level of al-ihsan, that means this is the level of your iman, and you guard it and you keep it in that state, that you're always worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you see Allah. And if you don't see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seeing you with certainty. And when we talked about that before, some of the ulama, they make it one level, and some they say it's two levels. And that one statement, either it means, as we heard, that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you see Allah, and since nobody will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this life, the believers, they see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the day of judgment. So worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you see Allah, and if you don't see Allah, which is a fact, then you know for certainty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching you, is seeing you. And that's how your ibadah will be in the most perfect way, with so much ihsan in it, which is the meaning of al-ihsan, the goodness. You will perfect your ibadah. The other opinion, that these are two levels. The first level is أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه, that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you see Allah. This is the highest level of al-ihsan. That imagine yourself making salah when you're seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing is the like of Him. The best na'im and the best delight and the best reward for the people in Jannah is not what Allah mentioned about Jannah of al-hur al-ayn and the food and this and that and the everlasting joy. The most delight and the most joyful thing for the people of Jannah is to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that the Prophet ﷺ used to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a long dua: وَأَسْأَلُكَ لَذَّةَ النَّظَرِ إِلَى وَجْهِكَ الْكَرِيمِ فِي غَيْرِ ضَرَّاءَ مُضِرَّةٍ وَلَا فِتْنَةٍ مُضِلَّةٍ. Oh Allah, I ask you to have the ladha and the joy of seeing your honorable face, meaning in the day of judgment, without any harm before that, or any fitna, meaning in this life. So this is the highest one. And whoever, Allah gave us the ability to make ta'ammul and to make tadabbur. Right? This is a human gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Animals don't have this. Ta'ammul is when you reflect, when you sit and you think. Either we use it for silly things and stressful things in this life that doesn't bring any benefit. You think and you're concerned about your rizq and provisions and what my job, my salary, my whatever there is, and thinking that is of no benefit. That's different than making proper plans of things. Or wasting one's life by not thinking whatsoever. Just become forgetful like this, just following one's desires, and that's it. And using the best of our times to reflect and to think in the proper way, in the ways that is benefiting for us. One of which is when we listen to the ayat of the Quran or the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, like that. Imagine yourself, not that you're trying to think how would you see if you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because nothing is the like of Allah. But imagine yourself as a human being making ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while you are seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How perfect the ibadah would be, and how the concern that you would have when you're making the ibadah. So this is the highest level. And the lesser level is that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching you, which is everybody has this belief, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all-seer, and He is seeing each and every one of us. He don't just see the physical actions so that you would perfect your standing and sujood and ruku' in the case of the salah, for example, but He sees what's in the heart also. So the ibadat done by the heart, the ibadatul ikhlas, sincerity, the fear of Allah, the hope for the rewards from Allah, and so on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees what's in the heart. Inna Allah la yanzuru ila صوركم ولا إلى أجسامكم ولكن ينظر إلى قلوبكم وأعمالكم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at your hearts and your actions. So these are two levels of al-ihsan. How to achieve this level? First of all, this is the objective of our life. Al-iman is not just to have it, but to perfect it, and to keep on having that concern. And the more the person makes the ibadah and with the dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and purifying ourselves from sins and seeking forgiveness from Allah, taking ourselves away from the evil environment that contaminate our hearts, the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes the person to this level when the dhikr of Allah is done according to the way of the Prophet ﷺ, which is basically following the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is a huge subject. It's the highest level of al-iman, or the highest level of the deen. It's the ayat that mentioned in al-ihsan are so many in the Quran, and it's so general, like many of these general terms in the deen of Islam. But you would see that it's one ayah, for example, إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون, which means that al-ihsan, this combination of al-ihsan and al-adl, or justice, it gives the perfect way of life. Of course, the tafsir of the ayah has many different understandings, but if you look at it from the perspective as the ulama they mentioned in the tafsir, the ihsan is your ibadah with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is, you have to make ihsan in every ibadah. And inna Allah kataba al-ihsana ala kulli shay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained al-ihsan upon everything. So if you're making salah, do it the best you can. But you're weak, you're tired at a certain time, do the best you can. And it doesn't mean that if it's not perfect, you leave it. No, you have to do it and do the best you can. And also part of that ihsan is to deal with people in the best way according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. But al-adl, from one perspective, refers to the dealing with others, with human beings. So a person become perfect in his life in which he worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with al-ihsan, and the way that he deals with people, he deals with them with al-ihsan, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching him, but he also live with al-adl. Even the adl, for a person being a creation of Allah, the justice is that everything is belong to Allah. So our life should be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He's the one that created us. This is the justice, otherwise it's injustice. But the justice also not to be among the mutaffifin, those who they want justice for themselves, and nobody wants to be treated with injustice, but they don't fulfill the rights of others when it comes to their turn to fulfill the rights of others. So this is the general thing in one's life, in relationship between the person and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the creation of Allah. The people that in our life, وَقَدَ رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. The ihsan that a person should have towards the parents. And whenever the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be upon al-ihsan for something specific, that means you would have all kinds of struggle with your own self not to do it, because it's against your desire. And that's why, as mentioned before, that you don't find the same command for the parents to do to their kids, to their children, because it's something that is natural in them. But you see the juhud and the ungratefulness of the children, or the generation, or the people towards their parents. And not just the young ones, but also ourselves. and how the favors of the parents upon us. And when a person has children and they're growing up, and how much is the parents they do for their children, and then they grow up and they have their own life and they forget their parents. And there's rights to be observed when they're alive and after their death and things like this. So وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And the word ihsana is not a command, is not a verb, it's a noun. That means you fulfill all what it means towards the parents when it comes to al-ihsan, which is a subject, of course, that needs to be given so much attention to it. And the entire environment that a person is in, the entire even society that a person is in, and you would find this also in the ayat of the Quran. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even ordered the Prophet ﷺ with the disbelievers, when he said فَبِمَا نَقْضِهِمْ مِيثَاقَهُمْ لَعَنَّاهُمْ وَجَعَلْنَا قُلُوبَهُمْ قَاسِيَةً يُحَرِّفُونَ الْكَلِمَ عَنْ مَوَاضِعِهِ وَنَسُوا حَظًّا مِمَّا ذُكِّرُوا بِهِ وَلَا تَزَالُ تَطَّلِعُ عَلَى خَائِنَةٍ مِّنْهُمْ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِّنْهُمْ فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ وَاصْفَحْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Dealing with the enemies of the Prophet ﷺ, those who were trying to kill the Prophet ﷺ, like the people of Bani Israel and Medina. After mentioning all of their evil actions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Prophet ﷺ, pardon them and overlook. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves al-muhsinin, those who are good doers. So al-ihsan, as the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَتَبَ الْإِحْسَانَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained al-ihsan upon everything. And the hadith, the completion of the hadith, فَإِذَا قَتَلْتُمْ فَأَحْسِنُوا الْقِتْلَةَ وَإِذَا ذَبَحْتُمْ فَأَحْسِنُوا الذِّبْحَ. That when you slaughter, which is something that looks harsh, painful for the animal, whatever there is, but this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permitted for you to do, then فَأَحْسِنُوا الذِّبْحَ. That means make it with goodness, perfect the way that you would slaughter the animal so that it doesn't go through pain, it's done in the right way. And by the way, and anyway, this is the purpose why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this animal that is permitted for you to eat. So the animal has no problem with it. It's just the human ignorance when they think that they can understand everything from their own perspective. So they think the cow and the chicken and everything is like a human being. Leave me alone, I want to finish my career. And right, the career of these animals is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them for. But with the condition that a person would do it in the most perfect way, with goodness, and while they're alive to take care of them and things like this. And this is a subject in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The ayat of the Quran that talks about that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves al-muhsinin. And there are so many, but it's mentioned with characteristics of the believers and how the ihsan requires struggle for the person to do it. الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Right, that وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that the Jannah أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ. Those who spend in times of ease, times of difficulties, those who suppress their anger, and those who pardons people, they forgive people. وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves al-muhsinin. Allah, when you look at the subject of وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, it's so much repeated in the Quran, which is a meaning that needs to be reflected upon. And we have in the Prophet ﷺ the best example. And even pardoning even enemies, and pardoning loved ones. And then you see the reality of when a person is weak in his iman, if his brother that has been good to him all of his life, and one thing that bad happens because of the weakness of the human beings, then all of this goodness is in the trash, and he does not remember anything but what is evil. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ, he warned the women from this, about kufran al-ashir. And he said that when he said that most of the people of the hellfire are from the women, and they said, a woman asked the Prophet ﷺ, is it because the kufr, that means disbelieving in Allah? He said no. He said kufran al-ashir, which is إذا أحسن أحدهم إذا أحسن رجل إلى إحداكن. If a man is kind to the husband, is kind to his wife all of his life, then he do one thing that is bad, she would say ما رأيت منك خيرا قط. I've never seen any goodness from you. Being ungrateful just because of one incident or one thing, or even counted things. And if people are not willing to forgive and to pardon those who they live with, they should not live with one another. Is it as if it needs to be one of the conditions to be established when people, for example, are getting married. Not, and if you say that to people, that means you're planning to do something wrong for me to forgive. This is, if you don't forgive, don't get into a relationship. If you're not willing to pardon and to forgive and to overlook, you're doing bad to yourself and to others. This is how life is. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. Because nobody's perfect. And of course, with conditions, it doesn't mean that a person do whatever he wants and he wants people to forgive him. But as also as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in Surah Al-Taghabun, يا الذين آمنوا إن من أزواجكم وأولادكم عدوا لكم فاحذروهم وإن تعفوا وتصفحوا وتغفروا فإن الله غفور رحيم. O you who believe, from among your wives and your children are enemies to you, so warn yourself against them. Right? وَإِن تَعْفُوا, and if you pardon and overlook and forgive, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most forgiver, the most merciful. We were talking about that a few days back, and it's amazing how the ayah explains something that you won't find anywhere on the face of earth, in any books, in any ways, unless they take it from the Quran. From your wives and your children are enemies to you. Meaning, if they take you away from Allah, if they become a reason for you to disobey Allah, to be busy with things that is take you away from the obligations of this life, and this is many examples can be explained about this. So what to do? They become like an enemy to you. فَاحْذَرُوهُمْ, warn yourself. That means don't compromise your deen because your loved ones. Do not make your wife or your children or your spouse in general make you disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No compromisation in this whatsoever. But then what to do with them? وَإِن تَعْفُوا وَتَصْفَحُوا وَتَغْفِرُوا. You pardon, you overlook, and you forgive. And the three words are mentioned, in which one includes the other two, if it's mentioned alone. Al-'afw includes al-safh wal-maghfirah. The safh includes al-'afw wal-maghfirah, and so on. But the details of it gives more meanings. Al-'afw is that when you won't punish, that you don't punish. Right? This is you pardon, that means no punishment. Al-safh is that when it's mentioned with al-'afw and the maghfirah, it means yes, you didn't punish, but you don't even blame. You don't even say a word to remind the person after 20 years of what they did in the past, or immediately. Or you do it with goodness, that you suffer, that you turn away from it. You don't even mention a word of blame. And the third one, taghfiru, of course, to forgive. But in this context, as the ulama, they say the tafsir of it is that you hide, you conceal the fault. You don't say it to anyone. You cover it as if it never happened. Because if they made you disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whose fault is it? It's you and not them. Because you already have been told, فَاحْذَرُوهُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, warn yourself against them. So if you didn't warn yourself, so who's the one to be blamed? You. Their actions is their actions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, will question them, and you're responsible for them. And you don't allow sins to be established, whether it's for them or for you or affecting you. It doesn't mean that, okay, then as long as it doesn't affect me, they can do whatever they want. No, you're responsible for their actions. And it shows that how a person should be firm and lenient and gentle and kind. All of this combination, and this is like al-'adl wal-ihsan. This combination that we have to work on ourselves, that it's not one extreme or the other. So this ayah in Surah Al-Imran, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, those who suppress their anger. وَالْعَافِينَ عَلَى النَّاسِ, those who pardon the people. وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, Allah loves the muhsinin, those who do these actions. And those who do these actions are muhsinun, they are good doers. And you would find also the balance between the rights of this life and the matters of al-ihsan. وَبِتَغِي فِي مَا أَتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ وَلَا تَبْغِ الْفَسَادَ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. As the people of knowledge, they said to Qarun, the one that has been given so much wealth and so on, seek from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the hereafter. Allah gave you provisions in this life, seek from it the hereafter. Don't forget your share in this dunya. Enjoy as long as it's halal. وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. The justice. Be kind, be good, the same way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been good to you. But not according to what you define. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is good to you no matter what. No matter what your situation is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is good to you. If you're a Muslim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did the favor that nothing is the equal of it whatsoever on the face of earth. And if a person is a disbeliever, أحسن كما أحسن الله إليك, He provided for you, that means worship Him alone and be kind to others and things like this. Al-Ihsan, when a person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in Surah Yusuf, that it shows on the person. And how is that to be shown? Allah knows best. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it show on the person. A person does not show off, but as the people, the brothers of Yusuf, right, when they said to him, قالوا يا أيها العزيز إن له أبا شيخا كبيرا فخذ أحدنا مكانه إن نراك من المحسنين. We are seeing you from among the muhsinin. Whether they see his actions of generosity, of kindness, he's someone of authority. If he gives an order for people to be imprisoned, nobody will ask him why you're doing this, as he did to his brother. If he's kind, nobody would give him anything extra if he's kind. And with this authority, he's being very kind to others, and he's al-Karim ibn al-Karim al-Karim, as the Prophet ﷺ praised him. So that what did they see from Yusuf alayhi salam, that they would say, Inna naraka min al-muhsinin? And where is that in the life of if a Muslim is applying the deen of Allah, he will be seen as someone that is from the muhsinin. As if these characteristics are applied. We don't live in a bubble or an island somewhere. We're living in and interacting with people. People see what we're saying and what we're doing. And when they see that we're exactly like them or even worse, in everything except when it's time for the salah, for example, a person makes salah. But where's the rest of the deen applied? And the salah, how does that affect? And this is why these are matters of knowledge that a person needs to seek the knowledge of it. It does not come by just the love of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have to learn the meanings of these things so that the person would apply, and not just a reminder, but rather to understand and to apply this in our life. Of course, the ayat of those who are muhsineen, the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unlimited for them. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, even with speech, وَقُولُوا النَّاسِ حُسْنًا, say to people what is husna, what is good, what is best. ولا تفسدوا في الأرض بعد أصلاحها وادعوه خوفا وطمعا إن رحمة الله قريب من المحسنين. The mercy of Allah is close to those who are muhsineen. So al-ihsan is in the salah, in the dhikr of Allah, and in every single thing in our life. It's a way of life. So al-ihsan is a way of life. When we say al-Islam is a way of life, right, which is al-ihsan is al-Islam. So al-Islam, to define al-Islam, submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to have al-Ihsan in everything in our life, which becomes the way of the life of the Muslim. And if that is established, not too much of da'wah that is required, and our relationships, our lives with and our ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just to have that concern to perfect our ibadah and actions based on the fact that as if you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And many things, but because of the time I don't want to keep you long, but it's a very important subject, and we can read the Quran from all these different perspectives to perfect our life according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.